Hello again, and we are going to be talking about the Adobe XD Prototyping tab. So in the previous video, we talked a lot about how we could design things in Adobe XD. We ran through a lot of the basics, but we skipped a lot of the stuff that you could figure out just by working with other Adobe programs in the past. For the Prototype tab, this is basically all new. There's almost nothing here that you would have learned from using another Adobe program, so we'll have to start from the beginning. Thankfully, there's not a lot to go over. Very few functions go very far in Adobe XD, so it won't take too long to run through all of these details. So let's jump in. So first we'll talk about vertical scroll. Vertical scroll, as you know, is the scrolling you would do vertically on a web page, whether that be on a mobile or desktop device. As an example of what something would look like without a vertical scroll, I haven't set it up on this page yet. So when I hit play, you'll see the page is quite tall. Now, the only reason it scrolls here is because it doesn't fit on my screen all the way. So let's take a look at setting up a vertical scroll. When you have your page set up here, if you look over on the side where I have scrolling here, I do actually have this set to vertical scroll already, but my viewport height is far too tall. If I look at my Matcha Goodness page over on this side, the preparing page, my viewport height is 896. So I'm going to match that over here and set this to 896. When I do that and I preview my page now, you'll see this looks much more like a mobile site design size. So that's the first step. When you start prototyping, make sure your viewports are set up correctly. On a desktop site, that would be about 1920 by 1080, and on a mobile site, you would probably want it to be about 896 pixels. If you set it to 900, that's okay too. Okay, so now that we have our web page set up, let's preview it just one more time before we take a look at the next step. Okay, it's looking okay, but it's not feeling very mobile-y because, well, there's something going wrong here. Our top bar, where we see our mobile carrier information, our signal strength, Wi-Fi, battery levels, all that stuff, that's supposed to be sticking on the top of the screen when we scroll. Same thing with our header that says Matcha Goodness and has that menu button there. So let's see how we can work with this to make it stick to the top. First thing I'll do is I'll select this actual header item here, and I can see on my right-hand panel we have an option called Transform. See this Transform panel. Below at the bottom, we have a fixed position when scrolling option. When I select that and preview my frame, you'll see the top bar sticks to the top now. This is great because it makes our site look much more like a real mobile site. And when we eventually set up a menu on this right-hand side here, we'll always be able to access it just by clicking that button. Same thing when we link back to home by using this little bowl icon, we'll always be able to jump back home just by clicking that button. Sticky navigation is super important, so I would always recommend you take a look at fixing the position when scrolling in the right-hand sidebar. Now, are you going to do this for every single site you build? Definitely not, but it's good to know how to do it because you could fix the position of any number of items on a page. You could fix a footer to the bottom of the page so that people always have access to whatever information you have in that footer, including contact information. So sticking things or fixing positions when scrolling can come in handy in a number of situations. Now it's time to talk about how to link pages together. This is a pretty common feature in Adobe XD, so if you have played a little bit around in the prototyping section, you might be able to figure this out on your own, or maybe you've already used it in a web app or something you've built previously. But we'll take a look nonetheless. So the first thing I'm going to take a look at is this button down here that says Preparation. I'm going to change this button so that it links to an object of my choice. So the object of my choice in this case is just going to be my next page, the Preparing Matcha page, as it says Preparation here. So what I'll do is I will go to my Prototyping tab, I will select my Preparation button, and I'm going to change what it links to. So you see here, this little plus button, you can grab this and just drag it out and you can link it to anything you want. You can link it to anything on any artboard you have set up in here, but for our purposes, we're just going to click and drag it and connect it to the next page. Very simple stuff. When we select this button now and we take a look at the preview of this page and we click it, you'll see it jumps us right to our next page. Now, you might think that when we preview this again, the jump is a little abrupt. It just takes us straight there, just a flash. So maybe we want to add a little bit of a subtle transition. So we'll select our transition here, our little pathway, and we'll go over here and we'll take a look at what the settings say here. So, the interaction on the right-hand bar. You'll see right now our interaction says tap, which is what we want. We want to be able to tap or click on that button and have it bring us to the next page. Other options include dragging or using keys or a gamepad to control it, or you could also use your voice. We're not going to talk about those right now. We might get to them later. Okay, let's take a look at the action type. So we have a transition. A transition just means it's transitioning to another page. And we have a destination. So the destination, you can actually select where you'd like the button to go from this panel here. You can pick from any of the artboards you have in your project and it will transition to that page. For animation, we are going to select dissolve, which will give us a nice fade, and we're going to select easing in and out. Easing just creates a curve that the animation reacts on, so the curve will soften the animation, so it'll ease in and ease out. So it's not as abrupt starting and finishing. We'll leave it at 3 seconds and we'll give it a shot. So let's see what this looks like. So if I scroll down and I click my preparation button, nice subtle animation that shows that I'm transitioning to a new page, but isn't as abrupt as it was before. So that's a great way to use tap interactions to jump to another page in Adobe XD. So for our second interaction on our prototype side, we are going to take the little matcha bowl up here and we are going to make an interaction with this that sends us back to the home page anytime we click this bowl. So of course we could take this and we could drag it over and select it to here, but I'm going to work the other way around. So I'm going to select this icon and I'm going to go through my action panel on the side here. So trigger is correct. We want to be a tap trigger. We want it to be a transition to a new page, certainly, and we want to choose a destination. So the destination we'll choose is we're going to choose the home page. So I'll find it here, right here, the home page. And we want all of these settings to be the same as last time. And the good news is Adobe XD remembers the last selection you made in your action panel. So when you create a new action, it will copy all of those settings and just add them in automatically so you don't have to worry about setting all of this stuff up again. So we are going to now take our little site and we're going to start on this page and we're going to demo it one more time. I'll scroll down to preparation and click. And we go to the matcha page, I can read all about it, and then I can click this bowl and go right back to the home page. So that's a great full cycle loop that we just created with our home icon and with our preparation button. So now we're going to talk about the power of overlays. So in this screen here, you can see we have a number of panels and we have an overlay menu over on the side here. This overlay menu is totally transparent on its background, and we can see that when we go to the design tab and select the artboard. The appearance here is listed as fill at 0% opacity. That's what's giving it its transparent background. That doesn't apply to the items on top of the board, but it applies to the background of the board, so we can create a floating piece in the middle of a space. So this menu here, what we're going to do to create an overlay effect is we're going to click on this menu. This little menu here is the menu you would click to get your overlay panel to show up. So how do we do that? First, we connect this to our overlay menu page. You'll see this dotted line just says tap here. And you'll see the action I have set up here is set to overlay. If it starts with transition, you just have to change it to say overlay on your actions menu. Your destination is the overlay menu, and for animation, we're going to choose slide left so that when we click on that menu, it will slide in like it's a real animated menu, because it is a real animated menu. We're not going to choose an easing, we're just going to choose none on this, and I'm going to increase the time it takes for it to move in to say 0.6 seconds. That feels about right in my head. We'll take a look and see how it lines up. So let's click on this artboard, the overlay pre-order artboard, and I'm going to hit play. So we have a regular web page here. Maybe we should make the header sticky, you know? So we'll select this header and we will make the header sticky in the design tab, fix position, and we'll do the same on all of these headers before we go any further, because we definitely want all of these positions to be fixed. Perfect. And we'll go back to prototype. We will go here and we will preview this page. So now I have a sticky header. I scroll up and down. I can see my menu button here. If I click it, my menu pops in. When I click it again, it pops out. Very nice. Now, if I'm being picky, my menu feels a little too close to my header. So I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to select my interaction again. And I have a little crosshair in the middle of this green section. This green section is showing me where my overlay panel will come in. I'm just going to nudge it down just a little bit and it'll give you a little ghosted preview of where that menu will be. Now I'll preview my panel again. I'll click this button and that feels about right. Feels like it has a nice amount of space between that and the next section. So once you've done this, and once you've created a menu that you can actually use and it's functional, you can do something very quick to add this to every other panel. So I'll select my element from this artboard. I'll right click and I will copy it. I'm not copying the actual element. Well, I am, but I'm not going to be pasting the actual element. What I'll be doing is I copy that element and I select every element like it. So for example, we have this menu over here, and I'm going to paste interaction by right-clicking. You can see the hotkey here too. So I'll paste that interaction on each one of these elements. And once those interactions are pasted, you'll be able to see I can select any one of these pages. When I click the menu will pop out from the side. So now that we have a menu that can link to all of these other pages in its own way, so we click the menu button, it slides out. What we need to do is make sure that each one of these menu items is actually linking to one of our pages. Otherwise, the menu won't be functional. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the home button here, and we are going to change the type, make sure the type when we activate our interaction, we need to change our type here because right now it says overlay. Remember, it remembers the last thing you chose. We want to change that to transition. And we are going to take and grab this and we're going to transition it to the home page. We're going to do the same thing with the preparation tab and we're going to connect it to the preparation menu page and we're going to take FAQs. FAQs will be linked here and contact us is going to be linked to our contact us page. Here we go. So if I've done everything right, we should be able to go to our overlay homepage and press play. Now, when I scroll up and down, I can view this page. When I click on my menu, I can click on the preparation page, I can click on the FAQs page, and I can click on the contact us page. And of course, all of these animations are 0.6 seconds and they're all coming in from the left because, as I said, everything you do will stay the same way for the next interaction you build unless you purposely change it. So I didn't put any easing on this, but I will now, and I'll change these all to dissolve at 0.6 seconds, let's say. I'll check this, change it to dissolve at 0.6 seconds with ease in and out. Same thing for my FAQ interaction, dissolve, ease in and out, and contact us, dissolve, ease in and out. So now when I preview it, we won't get that sliding effect like we have on the actual menu. We'll get a fade effect, which is quite effective. And now you can see this whole page is basically most of the way there as far as functionality. I can click and go home, I can return home, and it all just works. The whole thing loops itself together because of our overlay menu. So now let's review hover states. So to create a hover state, first you need to start in the Design tab of Adobe XD. And we'll scroll down here and we'll take a look at our button. the one that says preparation here. And I'm just going to click on this button and show you where I've built in my hover state. So I click on this button, and on the right hand side, right above me here, you can see we have 3 states. We have a default state, we have a hover state, and we have a disabled state. So if we wanted to show the button wasn't accessible, we could use this state, but for the time being, we're just going to set up the hover state. So we have a state that looks different than our default state, which is all that's really important. Now we'll go into the prototyping tab, and we'll select this button. I had the hover state selected when I came into the prototype tab. You want to select the default state before you make changes to show that it's transitioning to the hover state tab. So we grab our button, we make sure the default state is selected, good key, and we are going to add a interaction. We change that to hover if it's not already. We have a transition hover, and we will change it to hover state. The animation we're going to do dissolve, which will just make it fade when we hover over it. And I think that all looks good. So now we'll take a look at the actual interaction in our demo. You can see when I hover over this button, we get a hover state. Same thing would apply to anything else you wanted to add a hover state to. And remember, when we talked in the previous video about how states work, you can do all kinds of interesting things with states. So it's not just limited to hover effects that show a button is being hovered over. You could have it so when you hover over something, an image changes or something animates, lots of different things. And we'll talk a little bit more about that stuff in a little bit. Okay, we are going to talk a little bit about scroll to interactions using anchor links. So I have a scroll to interactions section I've built out here, and you see we have 3 buttons up at the top that are included in my navigation on my main page now. So the first thing we want to do every time we jump into something like this is make sure we have fixed position when scrolling selected. So I'm going to make sure that's the case for this, and also my subsection in here where we're going to be clicking. Now, I'll select my products here, so just the products, and I'm going to click this arrow to create a new interaction. When I click that, you'll see a little tail comes out. Now, normally when you're linking artboards and things like that, you would grab this and you could drag it to wherever you wanted it to link to. Because we're working with a scroll to, like I said at the beginning, we can't actually click and drag that to somewhere else on our artboard. It just doesn't work that way in Adobe XD. So on our right hand side over here, right above me, we can see the action is set to scroll to. If yours is not, set it to scroll to. We can choose a layer, which is why it's so important we name our layers appropriately. And we're going to take a look at our board and see what layer we might want to select. So I want my products to link to the Matcha Goodness products section. So I'll click here and I'll click Matcha products. So now you see I have a scroll interaction that leads all the way down to this. So we'll take a look and preview this. So now I scroll, I can see my header is fixed. I'll click on products, okay, and I'll click on products from the bottom and see it scrolls up, but we're not getting the entire section. So here's where we're running into a problem. We have a sticky navigation, and what's hidden under that sticky navigation is actually our category header. So we're going to make some adjustments to where this spacing is. And the way we do that is on the right-hand sidebar, you'll see we have an option called the Y offset. So the Y offset, you can see right here, if you click and drag this little lightning bolt, where you can, of course, edit it up here. So I've done a little bit of experimenting already, and I know that about -175 is the height of our header. That will give us a nice little buffer space when we're previewing the site. So we'll jump back into our preview, we'll click it again, and now you can see our header fits nicely at the top of the page when we scroll to that section. Once you've done that, once you've set up your Y offset if you need to, you would go down and you would link every other section here. So from the top, we know we're going to link this to another layer. So we'll select scroll to, we'll select layer, and we'll pick nav mobile top. There we go. And we know we want to have recipes linked as well. So we'll create a link to recipes, and that'll be this section down here at the bottom. So I'm going to choose the recipes layer. So as we said before, Adobe XD is pretty smart. So when you select a new interaction of a similar type, it will automatically input that same offset that you created for your first item. So it's usually more efficient to figure out what that offset should be on one item and then make the next interactions right afterward. It'll automatically add that buffer zone to the interactions. So let's do a little preview of the interactions we built. And we'll take a look in the middle of the screen and we'll click products. Yep, recipes, looks good. And top brings us right back to the top. Just that easy. Scroll to interactions. Okay, let's take a look at scroll position retention. So when we have an interactable object that we want to be able to click and transition to a new page, but transition seamlessly so the page doesn't jump right back to the top, it jumps right back to the section we had left off at. We can do that with Adobe XD, and I'm going to give you a real-world example after this demo example that makes a lot more sense. So let's take a look at this first one first. So we see we have a number of interactions already built here. So if I hover over this, I can see this is a hover state. These are all hover state buttons. So when we hover over these buttons, they'll show a little bit of interactivity when we're hovering above them. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to select our proceed buttons, and we are going to hit the plus button to create a new interaction. When we do, we'll see we have some options here. So I have a new interaction, which is a tap interaction. It's not going to let you create two of the same interaction because Adobe XD wants you to streamline your process a little bit more than that. So my tap trigger interaction is going to be set to a transition. We are going to jump to a new artboard. And I'm going to grab the artboard name here. So the artboard is called Scroll Position Back. Let's see here. Scroll Position Back. Here we go. Now it's linked to that artboard, but we are going to choose to have a preserved scroll position right here. So I'm going to click this button. This button is the important part. This will make sure that when we transition to this page, wherever we had scrolled to, it will be at the exact same location of the next page. And again, I'll show you a better example of this in just a moment. So we'll take this, we'll create a new interaction, and we are going to do the same thing, a tap interaction, transition, preserve scroll position, and we're just going to pick that same artboard here. Now, to make it a little quicker, if you wanted to, you could just grab the plus sign and link it right over, and that would create your third interaction, just using the same parameters you had just set up. Okay, so now we are going to test our interactions, but first we should probably have a way to link back to go back to the artboard that we were on previously, because as it stands right now, we only go forward, we don't have an option to go back. So I'm going to change this to have more interactions here on the go back, which is going to go to the scroll position proceed page, which is the one on my left. I'm going to do the same thing here, drag it over, and the same thing here. Because I've already created all the parameters I need for my scroll effects on the right-hand panel, this should just automatically populate all of that with the new style. So let's take a look. We're going to hit play. We're going to scroll down. We're going to click on proceed. So let's see. There we go. Proceed, go back, proceed, go back, and you'll see the scroll position remains the same when I do this. So let's take a look at that real-world example I was talking about. So I have a pre-built pre-order and pre-order received panel here over on the right, and I have a couple of interactions I've built in with auto animate just to fill things in so it looks like we're actually creating a real form, and I've linked the sign up page to a confirmation page. So we'll take a look at the pre-order page, and we're going to do a preview when I bring this over. So now when I click on each one of these, you'll see it auto fills the interactable sections, and now when we hit sign up, it fades into the confirmation page, but it retains our scroll position. So this is a great example of a way you would use this in the real world. Okay, let's talk a little bit about hyperlinking in Adobe XD. So hyperlinking is super useful when you want to create a link to an external object. So in this case, we'd be focusing mostly on linking to outside web pages. So we'll take a look at our hyperlink board we have here, and I'm going to actually link the See More button. So the first thing I'll do is I'll select that See More button just by double-clicking into the hierarchy. Now that we have this selected, you can see we have one interaction already set up. That's just a hover state. We're going to add a new one by clicking this plus button here, and you'll see over on the right-hand side we have a tap interaction that's been created. I'm going to keep that trigger as tap, and I'm going to choose type hyperlink. Once you choose the hyperlink type, you can type in a URL, https://www.google.com. And once you hit enter on that hyperlink you've entered, it will validate it immediately. So see, this check mark here shows that this is an okay to use hyperlink. That's pretty key. So I'm going to create a new Google or a new window over here, my Bing search window, because everyone loves Bing. I'm going to just have this so it will pop up when I actually preview this. So here we go. I'm previewing, and if I click see more, you'll see it opens in my web browser to google.com. So that's the first way you would typically use a link in Adobe XD. The other way, though, is to link something inline. So we're going to take a look here at our bamboo spoon section. And let's say that I want to link to measuring cups when somebody goes to the word measure on this section. Because we're actually just selecting a single word, we want to change back to the design tool, not the prototype tool, and click in here and select this text. So I just clicked into the text field and dragged across to select it. Now, over on the panel here on the right, you'll see we have another insert URL section. So I'm going to type in https://www.google.com/ hit enter. It will validate that link and it will put an underline underneath the link to show that it is interactable. So we'll preview this artboard now. And I'm going to click on this measure button and you'll see a Google window popped up. It was on my other screen, but you get the idea. You could also, if you wanted to, take this same text and you could link an email address by putting your email address in, name@gmail.com in our case, and then we'll do mail to with a colon in front of it. Mail to is the HTML shortcode for showing that you want to send mail to someone. So I'll hit enter. It validates because it is technically a real email address, even if somebody doesn't really have it. And we could click on this button now, and it would open up our email client to send an email. Okay, now we're going to be talking about how Auto Animate works in Adobe XD. Before we get started with Auto Animate, one of the most important things to remember is that Auto Animate works by identifying layers inside of your artboard that are named exactly the same thing as the previous state artboard would have those layers named. So it's very important that you make sure all of your layers are named the same before you start moving things around, or else the interaction's not quite going to work right. Great way to make sure that all of your layers are named the same is to actually just fully duplicate whatever artboard you plan on working with, and that's going to make things a lot more simple. Make sure everything animates the way you expect it will. So I've already created a couple of things on my artboard that's going to make things a little bit easier for me. So I have a whole section here that I know I don't want to show in my new view of this page when I interact with it. I've called this folder Hide Me. I'm just going to actually hide that whole folder. So now I know what I need to focus on. I just want to have a nice big name of the title of the T on my page. I want to have that image of the T a lot bigger, a lot bolder, and I want people to be able to see sort of the detail of the finer grains of this matcha tea. So I'm going to make a couple of changes in the design tab to this design we have here, because my goal really is, like I say, to showcase the quality of this tea. So I'm going to stretch out this image viewport box a little bit bigger, make this almost full screen size, and maybe we can make this even bigger here. I'm going to take this button, drop it down just a little bit, and maybe I'll take this gray background bar and lift it up. Bring up my type, make it a little bit bigger, make sure that's sort of centered. Same with my price. I'm going to bring this price up for the tea, make this a little bit bigger as well. Really showcase the quality of this tea here when people click on this tab. So now back in the prototype tab, what we're going to do is we'll grab our interaction item. So it's going to be this whole block here, and I'm going to just drag this over to my new artboard that I've redesigned. Over here you can see I have type selected as Auto Animate, and I have the destination because we whip-picked it with the little arrow. Easing in and out, that works for me, and 0.6 seconds for the duration. Now when we get to this second page, we're going to want a way to get back. So I'm going to add a menu, a small menu item close button here that I have in my assets panel. I'm not going to super specifically line it up, but I'm just going to have it up here in the top right corner. I'm then going to just whip pick that back to the previous tile. Now we can click on our Animate T tile page and preview it. So you'll see this is the magic of auto animate. It's not just going to transition you to a new page, it is going to animate all the objects on the page that you've changed. So everything has a nice smooth grow transition. Anything that wasn't on the previous artboard, like this little X, fades in nicely. It's a very nice subtle animation, and you can do so much with auto animate because it will just stick to whatever changes you've made to your second artboard as long as those layers are named the same. Very powerful tool. So now, as our final piece of the Adobe XD prototyping puzzle, we're going to take a look at how you can make an interesting drag and scroll navigation style across a number of sections to create real looking interactivity on your site. So we're going to go here and we're going to select this artboard first, and we're going to select this Sencha Coconut Mango. I'm going to create a new interaction here by clicking and dragging this to another artboard here. You'll see I already have a couple of interactions linked up. This is just the same as what we've done previously. So if I preview this page, just to give you an example, if I click this, it will zoom in and zoom out these items with a really obnoxious sound effect. So clicking here on the Sencha Coconut Mango again, we're going to see I have this drag interaction. So I've already selected my trigger to be drag, not tap. So when I drag and move my thumb or move my cursor over the item, it will interact. I'm going to have it auto animate to drag T2, which is this artboard here. We'll then take the same tile on the left side that we see on our other matches screen. We're going to drag this over and link that board. So look what happens when we preview this board now. We can take a look. We can obviously still zoom in. We can also drag over and zoom on this one and then drag back. So we can actually have a full interactable drag section between two artboards because auto animate is smart enough to know how to animate each one of these items. So I'll keep going just to keep giving you a preview of how this would work. So we'll grab each one of these items, and we don't have one set up for this one here, so we'll just leave that there. But now when we view, let's see, preview this page, and I drag over, I can drag over again, and I can drag back, and anytime I want, I can click in and it will animate the item that I have on the page. Super powerful stuff with Adobe Auto Animate tools inside of XD. So that pretty much covers our Adobe XD mini tutorials, about half an hour each video, so hopefully it wasn't too much of a drag. I know we move quite quickly through these things, but that's intentionally, so you can stop, pause, and go at your own pace through these videos. We didn't cover everything that Adobe XD has to offer though, and that's on purpose. We want you to dig in and explore on your own as well. Some things you might want to take a look at are like, how do videos work and how do you interact with videos in Adobe XD? That would be a fun thing to add on. There are other interaction types that we didn't go over, like using a gamepad or controller or keyboard controls to navigate things. Play around with some of that stuff, but everything we covered in these videos should give you the tools to make your next assignment great. So I look forward to seeing what you do with these prototyping tools and these design tools in Adobe XD. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.